Yeah, we just finished practice 14 this morning. We'll have our last helmets practice tomorrow for about an hour, and then we'll be done. I'm awfully happy to have gotten as much uninterrupted work in as we have. We certainly needed it. But I think we're winding up a very productive spring in all three phases. It'll be nice to get to the end of it and take stock in where we're at, and look at things both personnel wise and scheme wise, and point our eyes towards the fall. So the guys have done really well, and like I said, we've got one more day to get this thing wrapped up.
All right, David Teal, do you want to start?
Justin, when we last talked to you, you said that the primary takeaway from the most recent scrimmage had been what you felt was too large a gap between the ones and the twos. After having had another scrimmage, has that gap narrowed? Do you feel any better about it?
No, not really. I think that'll be something that through the work, through finishing up spring, and then having a summer program and getting into fall camp, hopefully we'll see the benefits of the extra reps or the extra work or the extra emphasis on those twos. I don't know that it can just manifest itself in 1 week's time. I think it's a little bit longer term project than that. So, but they've gone about it, they being the twos have gone about it really well and are anxious to improve and have embraced getting a little bit more work.
You had also said at the beginning of spring that primary emphasis included ball security on offense, takeaways on defense, and then third and fourth down for the offense. How would you evaluate your progress in those areas this spring?
I think it's become, obviously the emphasis on the ball has become more prevalent on the defensive side in terms of, I think we are becoming more conscientious of the ball when we get multiple people to the ball to tackle and work punches and rakes to try and get the ball out offensively. It's definitely on the forefront of the older players' minds. We've got to get the younger guys up to speed with all of that. Third down, is a point of emphasis for us on both sides of the ball. We've gotten really good work. I'm anxious to get to the end of this and kind of take stock in how we felt both schematically and personnel-wise about the work we got in. Do we need to make adjustments? But we've gotten good work. It's a little bit difficult right now for me to evaluate it until we get to the end and can sit down and look at what we did and how we feel about it.
Andy?
Yeah, Justin, what is your post-spring plans like? Would you have meetings with guys, or how do you kind of send them into the off-season?
Yeah, we have player meetings with the position coaches and with me. That'll be next week. We'll finish up our hard hat program with some testing and finals to send the guys off. We'll have our final meeting, I don't have the calendar in front of me, but somewhere in the first week of May there. And then when the guys get done with their finals, they can go home and relax a little bit. So we've still got some things to get accomplished this semester, at the end of this semester, and in the last couple weeks after spring ball.
We always seem to ask you about wide receiver depth this time of year. I know you got Trey and Tavion. How have the guys behind them progressed this spring? Do you see anybody take any steps?
Well, I'm anxious, obviously, to get Jaden back. Along those lines, we lost Shenga Hodge to an ACL last week, so he won't be able to play this year. But he's already had his surgery and is on the road to recovery. The two freshmen in Lofton and Jones, they've kind of hit a little bit of that wall right now after 14 workouts. But they showed some glimpses of being able to help us pretty quickly, I think, both aptitude and picking up the offense and technique, and also skill set wise.
With Changa, how much do you feel for a kid like that who came in so late last season, and obviously I think was probably building up for something this year?
Yeah, that's a tough deal. He's been incredible. I'm always marvel at some of these young people that work so hard and have a setback. And I always, I've talked about this with Caleb Farley, and I feel the same way about Shanga. He's just been so positive after this. You go in there to try and help them feel better, and their outlook, or their positive outlook in turn makes you feel better. So I hate it for him, but he's already on the road to recovery and getting better.
Norm?
Hey, Justin, I think we all sort of know that the guy in your backfield that's the built-in multi-purpose kind of guys, Raheem, obviously plays some slot and some of the receiver spots. I didn't know if there were, with so many guys coming into the spring at that spot, and there was some talk about, at least with Coach Cornelson, about potentially moving some of those guys elsewhere. Didn't know if there was a decision made on any of those guys to move them elsewhere. Have you worked anybody else significantly at some other spots that were back there?
No, we haven't. I don't think that group's skill set, moves over to any other spot. I mean, Raheem's the one guy that can kind of do both.
Yeah. And you mentioned Changa. I didn't know if there were any other guys that came into spring healthy that you're leaving spring, banged up.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have, Dev Taylor's banged up right now. He'll be back for the season. I mean, we've got several guys that are banged up, but Shanga is the one that, for the season.
Okay. And I'm just curious about a guy local for us, and a few weeks ago, Dax kind of indicated that Lakeem Rudolph, who came in, I guess, as a big defensive back, safety for you, had been working behind him at middle linebacker some. Is that still the case? Was that the case at all then, or where's he at right now?
No, I mean, I know Dax knows the positions on our defense, but Lakeem has not worked any at Mike. He's been working at the backer position. He, Allen, and EC have been working at that boundary linebacker spot. So maybe we need a chalk talk with Dax and explain all that stuff out.
He may have been just listing a laundry list of guys who are at linebacker, but he did specifically say middle linebacker.
Yeah, Lakeem keeps getting better. I mean, he was a safety in high school, and he is a big body guy that, was raw, but approaches each day with a great attitude. He's made huge strides through 14 practices so far. He's still got a long way to go, but if he keeps approaching it with that sort of attitude and willingness to learn, then he'll have a chance down the road.
And of your guys that were the early enrollees, I know that the learning curve is enormous for those guys, obviously, but to get some of those guys in early is helpful. Did any of those guys jump up and impress you quite a bit?
Well, the two wideouts, I think, that I alluded to earlier, Jalen Stroman's probably the furthest along of the young defensive players. I think it's almost harder on defense for those young guys. I don't know. I go back and forth about how I feel about it, but I just, on offense, you can teach a part of something and put a guy in to go do that and try and evaluate, is he going to be able to help you? That's very difficult to do on defense. It's very difficult to teach him just a segment of a call, and all the adjustments to it and all the formations you could get, motions and all that sort of stuff, and still evaluate if he can go play fast. He's got to have a larger understanding base to evaluate, can they play fast and that sort of stuff. So Jalen's, I would say, ahead of those other young guys. Nike Johnson's done a really good job. I'm encouraged by all of them. And most of those midterm guys were defensive backs. And we'll they need to hit reset too. We're kind of to that point of diminishing returns. They need one more light workout, and they need to relax for a little bit and get revved up for summer, and they'll be better off in fall. But it's just, in my opinion, it's a little bit more difficult for those guys because there's a little bit more involved in getting a good evaluation of where they're at.
Mike Barber.
Morning, Coach. But probably no position group was more disrupted or disjointed because of the COVID stuff than your defensive secondary. How much of a advantage has that been this spring that those young guys got all of that playing time and all of that experience this past year?
Well, it's been huge for us, in all areas. Obviously, the defensive backfield was a difficult situation between COVID and all the other things that went on. So it's been nice to have the same guys out there on a consistent basis working together. Shamari's obviously got a bunch of experience in that group, and with some other guys that have some. And Keontae's had a really good spring. He'll need to have a great summer and keep progressing. But you add a guy like Jermaine Waller, you can't help but get better immediately. So we've all benefited from it, quite honestly. We've all benefited from a little bit of continuity here in the short term.
And then specifically with Keontae, it was such a surprise to us that he got thrown out there early, obviously the circumstances, but from a personality standpoint, confidence, how did he handle, getting thrown into the fire?
No, he was fine. It's just such a unique situation. Like I said, the whole freshman class basically missed fall camp. It was just, I don't know, it was just the most absurd thing I've ever been through, quite honestly. And I don't mean the rules we were following. I just mean to try and play games during all of that. But, he's so even keeled. He's so level-headed, and he's a kind of quiet kid. But it's been fun. Shamari's kind of taking him under his wing. I think that's a unique and positive relationship. Keontae will tell you that he's taken Shamari under his wing, but that's not quite true. But he's kind of just taking it all in stride and done a pretty good job with it.
The last one for me, Braxton and having the full spring as kind of being the guy. How good do you feel about the progress he's made and what the offense will look like with him as your trigger man?
Well, I felt really good about him last year. I really did. And he was a little bit of a victim of the continued circumstances from last year too. So I feel really good about his progress and about where he's at and the things he can do. And he is a real good feel for pushing the ball down the field. And he's had a really productive spring.
Aaron.
Hey, Justin, I know you touched on this a little bit this spring, but now that we're at the end of spring, maybe we can look at it holistically. One of the biggest, I think, what-ifs of last year was just how much better the defense could have been had J-Ham had his hands on it in the spring. What was the benefit of the spring? Did you see any examples of maybe him working individually with guys or other coaches that just said, man, this is something that I would have liked to have had last year?
Well, it's just, it's all encompassing. It's everything from being on the actual physical field with your position coach to being in meetings to getting to practice, whatever it is we're asking them to do. Total understanding of what we're looking to, disguising looks, and it's, I don't know, I wish I could tell you just one awesome example. I really can't. It's just, it shouldn't be understated that, there's a reason coaches all over the country talk about how important practice is, and that's because it is. And, it certainly takes on an even bigger meaning when you have things that change, whether that's just a position coach or a coordinator or schematically or personnel. And, again, it's been really fun and enjoyable for competitive practices out there and chances for us to teach without a game looming, without teaching something to a specific offense or a specific defense, but just the fundamentals of what we're trying to accomplish.
And I know you've always appreciated the value of spring, but is it possible that you appreciate it even more now, having seen what it looks like to not have it?
Yeah, I mean, if there's one thing that we've learned it's that how important practice actually is. And I've always loved not just the value of spring, but the tone of spring. It's about teaching, it's about development, it's about good versus good. You don't have scout teams, you get guys a chance to go try and play. And for the guys that have been redshirting, running other people's plays all fall, they get a chance to run your system and get out there and compete for a job. So not only is it incredibly valuable for our players and our coaches, it's the most enjoyable time of the year. I mean, it's just a really, the weather turns warm, and I hate that we're not having this, I hate that we're not in Lane Stadium this weekend, but the weather turns warm, and you're getting to play ball, and you don't have a game on the horizon.
Last one for me is with some of the bigger high school football games being played now. What do you guys do with that? I mean, can you even go to those, or how does that work?
No, recruiting's still dead. Now, my understanding is today's the 15th. My understanding is that they're meeting today. We may get some guidance today, or we may not, on what the summer may look like for us. But right now, we're watching them on link. We get the link like everybody else, and watch them, or we watch the highlights that the kids post. So we're not allowed to go off campus right now. We're not allowed to have people on campus right now.
Thank you.
Hank?
Hey, Justin. Are there any elements at all of practicing football in a pandemic that struck you as good ideas to carry over to what you do normally?
No. I mean, it was survival. I mean,
Right.
It was just, can we get to a game? Can we get to, who's here, who's not here, take a roll? I mean, no, there's not. I'm sure somebody out there has taken a lot of good from how they practiced during it. We were just trying to fill spots and find people that could go play. So I do think there is some value in what we can, although we're all tired of communicating like this. I'm sure you all are. I am. There is some value in this, though. I think we can accomplish some things in our profession this way, to maybe be a little bit more efficient, whether that's meeting or recruiting or whatever. I don't think, at least I know I'm not for this all the time. I'm looking forward to this, going away. But I think there is some value that we can be a little bit more efficient using, some of the Zoom capabilities, obviously not to the extent we've been forced to over the last year.
There were times last year where you made no bones about the fact that it felt like you were kind of operating in a Twilight Zone episode, just with all the craziness that was going on. How much more comfortable are you going forward, and how much do you have to mitigate that comfort so you don't have another situation?
Well, I mean, it's still looming over all of our heads, and I'm probably guilty of reading too much because, while I'm not tuned into maybe some things that go on. I am pretty tuned in to reading on certain subjects, and this would be one of them. And I mean, how you feel can be determined by which article you read out of which paper. And I'm not sure that's a good thing either, but that's another topic. But, it's certainly, I guess the underlying theme is it's certainly still looming over all of us. Now, do we feel better about it? You bet. I mean, have we been, finally, Brett just sent me a text and finally said, I'm done texting you the results. I'll let you know if something happens. Basically, we've been, knock on wood, we've been doing so well with our testing that, you know, he's tired of testing, you know, texting me and telling me everybody's negative. He just said, I'll let you know if something happens. So now we have our next set tomorrow, so that could all change, you know. But,
Right.
you know, we do feel we've gotten in a little bit of a routine, and, you know, hopefully we've been through the tough part.
Thank you.
Try to get to a couple of follow-ups here. Andy?
Yeah, Justin, I think a lot of the talk last year about Amari Barno was wait until he practices at
Yeah.
defensive end for a full spring. Well, now that he's had a full spring, how does he look at that position?
Every day just continues to get better. You know, like he was pretty productive when he played last year without really knowing. You know, I don't want to make it sound like he didn't know what he was doing, but he was, you know, doing it purely off of athletic ability. And then he went through the last half of the season where he couldn't hardly practice during the week and still played, which I think is a remarkable compliment to him that he could be assignment sound without getting the reps that most guys get during the week. So he has been through a full spring now, continues to get better, still has, you know, when you see a guy with almost limitless potential and high character, I mean, it's a guy that everybody loves being around. You get really excited to watch him grow and watch him continue to get better, and he's made those strides. I'm not ready to dub him. You know, he hasn't hit he hasn't hit a spot where he can't continue to improve. Like, he's still got work to do, but this has been really as beneficial for him as an older player as it was for some of our younger players.
Was that just an injury thing that was preventing him from practicing?
Yeah, he had like a foot or something, and he missed a little bit of the offseason. He had it cleaned up. I can't remember, quite honestly, Andy, if it was a foot or a knee, but it wasn't a major deal. He could still play, but he was banged up and could hardly get from week to week. Got it cleaned up after the season. Has been recovering through the offseason, but it's been full go all spring.
And just to stick with defensive ends, we're going to talk to Taiwan Garbett here today. I'm curious, after last season where he just kind of came back right in the middle of the season, I have to imagine that was difficult to do. How has he looked this spring as he kind of got back into the mix?
Well, I've seen glimpses of old Taiwan out there. You know, I think, and I'll have to let Taiwan speak for himself, but he was dealing with, things that he needed to deal with. I do know that he knows that we love and care about him and want what's best for him, that it's not about rushing the quarterback or getting tackles for loss. It's about making sure Taiwan's taken care of in the right way, and Ty knows that. And it's been awesome to have him back, and, you know, he enjoys the team. He enjoys the other players. He enjoys the coaches. Like I said, he knows deep in his heart that we genuinely love and care about him and are here to help him in any way. But it's been fun to see him. It's hard on him to be removed and then jump right back in, and he was in terrible shape, and he's trying to find his way. And then it was a little bit like that early in the spring too. But I've seen it in the last couple of weeks where it's been fun. You know, he's back there enjoying himself and cutting loose, and back to getting closer to the old Taiwan.
David Teal, did you have a follow-up?
Justin, you mentioned earlier to Andy that you'd be meeting with the players, and that at the end of the semester they'd be heading home. There's uncertainty about June's recruiting calendar, but how important will it be at some point for you and your staff to get away, not together, but separately, and just leave Blacksburg, go where you go, and do what you do?
Really important. If they would just tell us what the summer is, then I'll make the schedule, but I can't make the schedule until they tell me what we're going to be doing. So hopefully we'll get some clarity on that. But it is important to get away. I mean, we did have some time in the wintertime to get away, but it's important for us to get with our families and go spend some time away. If you are a football coach and you're going to spend a week or two of vacation in the place that you work, you're going to find yourself up at the office. you need to go get away. And we all have responsibilities to our extended families. I need to go see my mom and dad and my sister and her husband and kids and my grandparents that are still alive in Pawhuska, Oklahoma. We need to go do those things. And those are things that I think we're all looking forward to as well. As much as we love and are enjoying spring ball and all the things that are going on here, there's an element of recharging your batteries that I think is important. During that time before the big, because once it hits, boy. I mean, once you start going, there's no letting up until, and even when it's all over, it's on the road recruiting, assuming we're back to normal.
And then just one more quick one. Were there any plays from the scrimmage Saturday? Or was it Saturday that you scrimmaged?
Yeah, we did. We actually let the twos do a little bit of scrimmaging today, but I'm trying to think. Connor got in there. I'm just trying to go through the deal. Connor got in there and ran the ball, pretty well. Looked like he enjoyed it. That was one takeaway. From that was that Connor's not afraid to get in there and go run the ball. He was live for just a couple segments. We did some goal line stuff, which went about like you would expect. Some open field. The defense stepped up and played pretty well. I think they get a little tired as the scrimmage went on. Maybe gave up a couple plays that they wouldn't have if they'd have been a little bit fresher. D. Lofton, showed up. Made a concerted effort to get him the ball a couple times with the ones on the field, and he made some plays. Tavion made a nice play on a pass, broke a tackle. But there was some good give and take. I can tell you that. I wish I could. I think Dev Taylor had. No, that was 2 scrimmages ago. But anyway, defense played well. I don't mean to just point out offensive guys. I thought there was really good give and take.
Thank you.
Last one, Mike Barber.
Just a couple, Justin. Have you talked? Will the players be required to be vaccinated before they return?
That's not a decision for me to make. I don't know what our being Virginia Tech's stance will be on that.
And you talked about the depth and the gap between the 1s and 2s. Will there be any chance to, do you think, address that through the transfer portal? I know that's still a big, market out there.
Well, we've got to handle our numbers. I'm not positive where our numbers will be. I'm sure we'll have some attrition after spring ball, and try and address that. We are still in the market for an offensive lineman. That's just from a numbers standpoint, but we'll have to see where we're at the end of this and try and assess. But we don't have any room, so we'll have to see, kind of how it all shakes out.
And the last one for me, Rayshard Ashby, your experience coaching him, what do you think of him in terms of a pro prospect versus just what did you think to him as a player in your program?
Well, it doesn't really matter what I think about the guys as pro prospects. What matters is the NFL and what they think. Rayshard was, in my opinion, the greatest compliment anybody could give a football player is to tell them that they're an overachiever, that they were a better player than they maybe ever should have been. And Andrew Matua-Pawako is an overachiever, and Rayshard Ashby is an overachiever. And I hope somebody gives him a chance because he's a really instinctive football player, as instinctive of a player as I've ever seen. He's got incredible vision at linebacker, and obviously was really productive. And Rayshard's got a bright future in whatever road he goes down. I hope he gets to play in the NFL for a long time. If that doesn't work out, he's going to have a bright future in whatever he decides to do.